Travelers, and welcome back to Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, my fellow guides and I discussed the history of Mondstadt as it relates back to the Lawrence clan and vengeance. After finally wrapping our heads around the hierarchies of Mondstadt, we think there's going to be something big coming Mondstadt's way in a future update. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the ever so ominous and spooky Abyss Order. Before we start, I want to remind our travelers to visit talesofteyvat.com to see visual representations of the lore mentioned during today's podcast. Your guides have put them together for you to make things a little easier to understand. Now, let's jump into it. Travelers beware though, this is going to be a very spoiler-heavy episode, as we will be discussing the Dainsleif Archon Quests, Enkanomiya, and the Chasm. So you've all been warned.
Turn back now. It's your last chance.
Or risk it for the biscuit. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Risk it for the Trisket.
No, not the Triscuits. Ugh. I mean, wait, with spinach dip?
Scrape up that mouth for the good of Genshin.
So when I say Abyss Order, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
An abyss mage with its little legs.
With its little legs.
All I can think of is their little dance when they're out of their shield and them going, "Yeah, please help me!"
Exactly.
It's just the highest pitch. And like, I have a little Abyss Mage plushie that I got from our dear friend Feeny here that my boyfriend has taken from me.
Oh, no.
He's commandeered it because it's the cutest thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. They're so adorable when you're not fighting them, and so infuriating when you are fighting them.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
I always think directly of Enjou, and for anybody who decided not to heed the spoiler warning, Enjou is an Abyss Herald that we meet in Enkanomiya, and he's hysterical. He's so funny.
Yeah, I think he's an abyss.
He's a lector.
He's a level above the heralds, I think.
No, lectors are just below heralds.
They are?
I think so. I thought that was what it was, because there's the heralds,
You're probably right.
lectors, and then mages, and then some people include hilichurls because often enough you find abyss mages with hilichurls, but the top dog is possibly our sibling. Spoilers. We said that.
And you know what's interesting too is Enjou seems to be very engulfed with the travelers. In the 2-year anniversary live stream they did a cute video where Enjou comes and is reporting back to our Abyss twin and is like, "Hey, my lord, check out what your sibling's been up to." And so we know that he's directly answering to the Abyss twin too. So he's very high up there. He's hilarious.
I think it's pretty safe to say that our sibling is the leader of the Abyss at this point. I think we know that for sure, especially within that Dainsleif, the first time when we go through that first Dainsleif Archon with the upside down statue.
The defiled statue, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think we know that in that first Dainsleif quest with the defiled statue, when he comes, well, I'm saying he because I play as Lumine, but when our sibling comes through, it's pretty obviously like everybody's like, whoa, like here's the main dude.
Oh, absolutely. That was crazy. I wanted to cry.
Yeah, that was a really interesting turn of events. I really did not expect that at all.
Did anyone expect for our twin to walk out of the portal?
No, I was expecting maybe, I don't know, something like, oh, we have another like bad guy we'd have to fight. They come out and they also have the sword from the opening.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they have the same sword from the opening cutscene?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
It's like they're already, like, they've not lost their powers at all while we're like playing Avatar. Like going through and collecting all the elements at the moment.
We are Aang.
Right. And they have additional powers, it seems like, because they can control the abyss stuff. I thought that whole quest line was so thrilling because at that point, you've gone through Mondstadt, you've gone through Liyue, and you just finished this like epic finale fighting Abyssal. And you're kind of like, who's this mysterious figure? And then as it unravels, you realize that it's tying back to your sibling. And you're like, for the first point and so long, you're actually getting some information about your sibling.
Yes. We know that they're no longer in like a little portal somewhere. They're not locked away. They're like alive and well.
Right, and he implies that he was, just as Paimon is our traveling companion, Dainsleif was the traveling companion of your sibling, and he's, tracking an Abyss Herald, which leads you to the defiled statue, which leads you to find out that the Abyss Order has this plan called the Loom of Fate, where they are trying to use a statue of Mondstadt, a statue of Venti, turned upside down. They're going to add Osial's limbs to it, use the eye of the first ruin guard created, or field tiller as they were called in Khaenri'ah, to create a mechanized god, which just makes me think of Mecha Godzilla, to be honest. So that was really shocking. And also just when you first get to this defiled statue and the grand thief of the treasure hoarders is dead, and we're so not used to dead people in this game at that point. So I thought that was a little shocking.
At that point is a keyword.
Right, at that point.
Are we sure he was alive for like a second and then straight up confirmed?
I think he was dead. Done.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Paimon was shook.
Yeah, when Paimon shook to someone's dead.
Yeah.
Full shooketh. I mean, I'm still shooketh. I'm like, what the fuck? I can't even come up with words. I'm just saying mouth noises.
Engrossed in what you're doing with Dainsleif and learning more about him and your sibling, and he's asking you all these questions that, for me, the whole Loom of Faith, Osial tentacles, Satanist activity, totally went over my head.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a month later, or maybe even a few months later, when they were releasing the next Dainsleif quest, that I went back and watched it and was like, holy shit, this actually happened in Mondstadt, of all places?
Yeah, and it's so dark.
I thought almost the same type of thing, but I rewatched it when another friend was going through that part of the story. I was like, I could not wait for them to get to it to see if they had the same reaction. But then I felt like I was having a whole other. I was like, wait a second, I don't remember this. Did I just not see it? Mm-hmm. But I think it's like you said, there was so much going on at that point. Same thing with the opening cutscene, that you're trying to take it all in, and sometimes it's just too much.
Yeah, and it's so dark in a way that makes it that much more shocking when your twin shows up and is on the enemy side. Yes. And then you realize that they're not just on the enemy side, they're like the leader of the enemy team that we've been fighting this whole time. And it's very confusing. And then, they go through the portal and everything. I did want to ask about one other thing, which is not technically about the Abyss, but it's related to this Dainsleif quest, where there was a preview video of the We Will Be Reunited quest. And in that video, of course, it's showing the version of the game in which you chose Ether. So it shows Lumine, she's controlling a ruin guard, which is carrying her in its hands at the beginning. And then it sets her down, and she finds the dandelion that Dainsleif and Traveler later find. And she steps on the dandelion and walks over to this cliff and looks down and sees her brother fighting some hilly churls. And then later on, at the point in the game when you're told these things by Dainsleif, you're at Stormterror's lair and you look up at that cliff that she had been standing on before, and you feel like something familiar there. And you're drawn to the dandelion that was stepped on. And I found that really odd that they can sort of, I guess, sense each other's presence, or it was like Lumine had an emotional reaction in that moment, and that created a stamp
it's
that
twins.
Ether was picking up on. I thought that was really interesting.
It's the twins. It's the twin synergy shit. It's gotta be.
It could be, but also Albedo tells us that we smell of the stars. A lot of people tell us that we smell of the stars, or that we don't seem like we're from here.
Yeah, and Dainsleif even says to the Traveler, perhaps you smelled something familiar. He actually uses the word smell.
Which would make sense if he had traveled with our twin already.
Yeah.
Right.
He would know that we have a different scent.
I mean, I think he gives it away a little bit in the very early part of that quest, where, he's kind of being a little sly, and you need to kind of look into what he's saying to see that he's really talking about your sibling and all these things. And I think he's much more aware of things that are going on around you and in the environment that he doesn't necessarily always speak of. And he may have sensed that as well.
Yeah. And then there was one other thing from that video I wanted to touch on, because this ties back to our first episode. And that is that Lumine has this memory when one of the, an Abyss mage is giving her intel that the plan to corrode Dvalin failed and it was because of her brother, she has a memory flash back to the battle with the unknown god. And in that video and her memory flash, it's very clear to me that they're fighting her in Celestia.
Yeah, you see more of a base in the video than you have in the opening cutscene.
Right. And it shows from Lumine's perspective that she's getting encased in those squares. So to me, this lends to that theory that they were entrapped by the unknown god. And then Lumine woke up, or, you know, your sibling woke up and traveled through, had these like benevolent travels through Teyvat that we're sort of learning of as we go to other places. Like in Sumeru, you're learning from the Aranara that your sibling was good when they were in Sumeru, and helpful. So it lends to that theory that your sibling went through Teyvat while you were in stasis, and this was prior to the events of the cataclysm, because it also shows Lumine running through the cataclysm as it's happening.
Yeah.
And being horrified by the destruction that she's seeing. So to me, it makes sense that she went through the land, had a good time. She witnessed the cataclysm and it broke her heart and demoralized her, turned her against the gods because of what they did. And that makes sense to me why she's now aligned with the Abyss Order.
I have a question though. Didn't the cataclysm cause Khaenri'ah to fall?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then we were kicked out of Khaenri'ah before Khaenri'ah fell?
I don't think we were kicked out of Khaenri'ah. I think Brandon makes a really good point. It seems more so that we may have been leaving Teyvat during the Archon War.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, the video doesn't confirm that, but if we were fighting the unknown god years prior to the cataclysm, it would make sense that we saw the Archon War unfolding and decided to leave. And then the sustainer of heavenly principles decides to step in and
was like, you don't get to go.
Maybe she was hoping she could use us.
Mm.
Maybe she blames us for the Archon War somehow.
Ooh.
That would make a lot more sense to me. It also would tie in with a voice line Venti has. Venti says that we've traveled with him before. And then when we don't remember it, he's like, oh, it's okay. Let's do it again. So if we had met them during the Archon War, that could explain Venti knowing us too.
Mm-hmm. I forgot about that.
It also makes me wonder if the reason that the unknown god was attacking them was because she was scared they were going to reveal something to civilization, which has been now sort of been taught to believe that the gods were always there, even though they were not, which is discovered in Enkanomiya. And that's something that the Abyss sent Enjou to Enkanomiya to discover proof of, so that they could get this proof out to the world, to show the world that the gods came from outside of Teyvat. They weren't always there. So maybe the unknown god and, put the twins in stasis because we came from a different world, and maybe we had intel that the gods were not of that world.
Right before the cataclysm, Khaenri'ah had actually sent a ruin guard and a small army to Enkanomiya to look for the same proof, the book, that there was a time before the gods. And we possibly could have been the first gods to come down to Teyvat. You never know. Sometimes, though, people refer to the travelers as angels as well.
I mean, that definitely comes into the fact that the only people we know that can cure abyssal corruption, like we see with Dvalin's tears, those very red tears in the very beginning of the game, where he's, being very manipulated by the influence of the abyss. I was about to say the influence of chaos. Wrong.
Same thing.
Wrong thing, but kind of the same. The only people that can cure it is us, the traveler. If Venti could have done it, he would have done it a long time ago, and he also wouldn't have been affected by it. And so would I when it came to her friend being consumed by abyssal corruption. If she had the power, she would have done it. So it feels like, or at least it seems so, that we have particular purification powers, which might lead us into we were maybe the angels of a different world, or even gods of a different world, or the original gods of Celestia, and we were cast out.
I want to take a step back here. and talk a little bit about what abyssal corruption is in the sense of the game and what that means. So for travelers who listened to our first episode, you may recall that Brandon explained the different realms of Teyvat to us. And one of those realms is the Abyss, which is also considered the Dark Realm, Brandon?
The Void Realm.
The Void Realm. And in this Void Realm, there is said to be many different things compared to the other realms of Teyvat. One of those things is that time is different there, and another is that there's a strange type of power in the Abyss. Not only do we see this through corruption, but we also see this through Childe's training when he fell into the Abyss as a kid, which we can talk about later. And we also have heard of another adventurer who was in the Abyss. I forget who it was, who talked about these crazy monsters they saw in there and how strong they were and how it felt like no one would be able to defeat them.
That is involved in a quest.
Which also would make sense for Childe because he is addicted to something. And if it's not like cocaine, I don't know what it is.
Well, that's what attracts the abyssal corruption is ambition. It's like kind of the opposite with visions. Visions are granted due to passion or like an idea to protect in like kind of a more not so dark ambition in a way. While abyssal corruption is like, oh, you want to be the baddest there ever was. You want to be the most powerful there ever was, or like world domination, as Childe would say.
It's interesting because visions are based on your ambition. The same idea, I guess, as, you know, you have two paths. Your life path is forking in front of you, and you could choose to go one way or the other. Are you going to take the road less traveled that might eventually lead you to a positive ambition that might bring you power based on the positivity in your head and the strength in your body? Or are you going to take that other route that's going to be a quicker route, similar to what we see with people who pick delusions? They don't want to wait to be granted. They want it now. In Childe's case, it's completely different. But because he fell into the abyss, he was a dumb 14-year-old with a sword and a loaf of bread, very Jean Valjean-esque, if you ask me. But back to the corruption. The abyss is said to be able to corrupt people and creatures. The first experience we see in-game with abyssal corruption is Dvalin. That is one of the four winds. That is Venti's BFF. And Dvalin was bit by Durin many years ago. Durin is a dragon from Khaenri'ah, created by Gold, who is also Albedo's master. Durin was sent to Mondstadt and was corrupted originally by Gold and her ambitions, and went to Mondstadt in hopes of becoming friends with Dvalin, which is really sad. But because of Gold's corruption, ended up fighting and terrorizing Mondstadt. And there was no Knights of Favonius at the time, so there was no one there to defend Mondstadt. Venti and Dvalin then fought Durin. Durin bit Dvalin. The fight was so rough that even though Dvalin and Venti won, Dvalin was seriously injured and later was overcome by abyssal corruption. And Venti actually had to go to sleep for hundreds of years afterwards in order to properly heal and recoup from the events. So the first time we see it, they're taking advantage of an already wounded dragon. So that kind of had me curious at first of how strong it really was.
Well, there's several different like types of corruption, right? Dvalin is literally bitten, so it's in a way he's infected.
Well, he was bitten by Durin. The Abyss came later and took advantage of the fact that he was injured to use the power to corrupt him.
But is Durin infected by the Void?
No, Durin was not affected by the Void.
Are you sure?
Yes.
He was just under Gold's crazy.
I always took the cataclysm as being like Gold did something to like unleash the Void Realm power or the Abyss and like tie it into like the Khaenri'ah curse to me has always been tied into the Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree. But from everything I've read, because I also at first thought that Dvalin and Durin both were overcome by abyssal powers. But when I was reading up before the episode so that I could say that, it was nowhere in sight that Durin was affected by abyssal powers. It was just Gold.
Okay.
Which is what makes Albedo kind of scary, as much as that hurts me to say.
Mm-hmm.
There's something interesting too about what Durin is made of, because his crystallized blood is able to bring back that tree in Dragonspine. It's like able to revitalize that tree. So I wonder if there's like a duality or something in Durin's blood.
Probably. Because like, was Durin created when Gold was under the abyssal influence.
Gold was never that we canonically know about under abyssal influence.
She's just crazy.
Yeah.
She just off a fucking rocker. Damn.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call her? Like the mother of sin or something like that? Like it was like she made some kind of original sin.
She's like Eve.
Yeah, sort of. You know what I mean? Like she crossed the line.
Not evil.
Gold is known as the Great Sinner.
Yeah, the great sinner. Ooh, that's sexy.
We can speculate all we want, but like there's a possibility that Gold was like, you know what? Fuck the gods. We don't need the gods. We are advanced beyond our years. I'm gonna open this, take down the gods. The gods were very angry. And it kind of backfired.
She's like, I'm gonna make Albedo so my son Kaya has someone to keep him company while I'm traipsing around the abyss. Oop.
Ew.
Oh no, I hit this lever. Oh no, all these monsters are pouring out.
Oh no.
When we go back like to the type of influence, there's several different ways it can affect you. And we can see it through Childe, because originally before he went into the abyss for 3 months that were actually 3 days, and I'll explain that in a second, he was a very bright kid, a very curious kid. I don't think he was as mischievous,
No.
but he was just like a little shit. He was 14. He's whatever. And then he falls into a hole in the forest, wherever this may be, and basically spends 3 months in the abyss. And when he comes out, his entire personality is different. He's obsessed with fighting, and he's like, must battle. And of course he has like his, what's it called? His different form that he can go into.
That legacy.
Yeah, the Foul Legacy. For some reason, I'm like, yes, the Foul Herald. That was not it. You can have a very flip of the switch 180 personality change when you're in the abyss. And of course, he experienced 3 months, but when he comes out, it's only been 3 days. So there's already a timey-wimey bullshit happening.
It's also important to note with Childe's case that he was trained while there.
Exactly, which means there are people down there living there. It's livable.
Well, it's actually unknown if there are people living there. Skirk, who trained Childe, is actually believed to be someone surviving in the abyss. From what we can see surface level, they don't currently see the abyss as a livable place, and they see it as a place where if you go there, you're lucky to survive. So there's the question of almost like nature versus nurture with Childe. Was the nature of Childe changed while he was there, and did he have a flip of the switch moment because of corruption? Or was he forced to survive and trained to survive? Therefore, his nurturing status more so became survival, and he had to survive down there and is now just this huge fighter.
Porque no los dos.
True. There's also a part in his one story trailer, one of the 7,000 that feel like they come out for each character, where they actually mention that fighting wasn't always his number one goal, and that no one really knows what changed his perspective. Obviously, as game players, we know that it's the Abyss because we unlock his story level and everything, but he's also not 100% sure of what powers he holds, whether it be the Foul Legacy or in general his skills. There's actually a quote in the Dainsleif narrated video that says that his martial legacy is something that he inherits, but it's one that even himself doesn't fully understand. If he was corrupted, it would make sense. He doesn't really understand why he's doing what he's doing and why he has the need to fight. That could be a flight or fight reaction as well in him. But if you want to go back, so Dvalin and Venti are the first time that we see the abyssal corruption. The second time, the Abyss tries to corrupt the spirit of Andreas, the wolf god. That was also in a Dainsleif quest, right?
Right. So this is after we discover the defiled statue and we go and talk to Babs back at the cathedral, and she confirms that a statue of Mondstadt is missing, and all of a sudden Rosaria comes in and is like, the Abyss is attacking Wolvendom, which I thought it was a little sus. Like, how does Rosaria know this?
Rosaria sus.
Yeah. And then so, they go to Wolvendom and encounter this Abyss Herald that Dane has been chasing, trying to corrupt Andreas.
And they fail. And that is, again, because of the Travelers' intervention. That's our second experience then with the abyssal corruption. Our third experience with abyssal corruption isn't our own experience. It's a story that you can learn about during gameplay, but it's about Mikoshi Chio. I could be pronouncing that wrong. If I am, I apologize. She was a very, very good friend to Ei and Makoto. in Inazuma when they were god. And she is shown as the Oni laying on her back on the little picnic blanket in the Raiden Shogun's 1 story trailer as well. She was actually swallowed whole by a beast of sin, which is assumed to be an abyssal beast. And that swallowing, even though she was able to break free, she was corrupted and turned evil. She later fought A, and it is assumed that she died because her 1 arm and 1 horn were completely taken off, just chopped off during battle with the Shogun. And it's assumed that she kind of crawled into the forest and died, or crawled into the forest and was killed by the Magu Kenki.
I mean, that is oof. Onis get it bad, man.
Wait, she was swallowed whole by the Magu Kenki?
Oh, no.
It's like a big snake, right? It was a big, abyssal snake-esque.
You're thinking Orobashi?
Oh, I am.
Yeah. This Orobashi was a different friend, died during that fight.
Damn!
Mikoshi, or Chio, I think she goes by Chio. She was swallowed by this random beast of sin. We don't know if it's a dragon. We don't know what it is. She was able to rip herself out of it because she's a strong as fuck Oni. But the blood of whatever beast she was in corrupted her. She was just in there for too long.
Damn.
It's really weird because they don't ever dive too deep into that story. They hint at it in the Raiden Shogun character trailer, which we'll link to on the site. And we'll show you some screenshots from it too, because it's kind of crazy. But they never really deep dive into it in the game. You can find bits and pieces of the story by talking to people and A's stories and blah, blah, blah. But she also is said to be overcome by abyssal corruption.
Oh, so I was just reading that this beast was with a tiger's body and a snake tail. So that's an interesting tidbit of a beast that's one of the dark forces of the cataclysm.
What do you mean?
I'm just saying that the beast she was swallowed by had a tiger's body and a snake's tail. And we haven't seen anything like that.
That sounds like the Golden Wolf Lord, doesn't it?
Oh, the one on the Foggy Island.
Mm-hmm. Because he's got a tail. I guess the Rift Hounds all kind of sort of have a little weird they're a little bit related to the Golden Wolf Lord, but I don't think he has back legs or anything like that.
So gold being linked to the Abyss just confirmed even more.
Hold up. Wait a minute. This could also be a tie-in to a Japanese mythical creature from, I guess, the Tale of Heike, where it's basically a Japanese chimera, and it has the head of a monkey, the limbs of a tiger, the bodies of a Japanese raccoon dog, and the front half of a snake for a tail.
Oh, God.
It would make sense that in the Abyss, there's a bunch of chimera-esque creatures, because that's one way to freak anybody out, but you would think, oh, these things just don't go together.
I think it also comes down to what was the Abyss up to before the fall of Khaenri'ah? Because currently we're linking Khaenri'ah with the Abyss. We are seeing that the people of Khaenri'ah were cursed. And because of this curse, they then became hilly trolls and abyss mages, and seemingly abyss selectors and such as well. Not to mention that they've also become the serpent knights that we see in the chasm. So the Abyss is the cursed people of Khaenri'ah? Question mark? Or was the curse that bestowed Khaenri'ahns abyssal based, which would then mean that the Abyss was something to do with the gods? Is there a god of hell?
I believe the Abyss is made up of the Khaenri'ahns.
So was there no Void Realm prior to Khaenri'ah falling?
No, I think the Void Realm was there before. I think the Void Realm was the Abyss. That's why I think that the Abyss has something to do with the Khaenri'ah curse, or the cataclysm somehow used the power of the Abyss to transform the people of Khaenri'ah into those monsters. That's how I always took it.
It's possible that the gods... So follow me down this rabbit hole. It's possible that within the lust for knowledge, they might have opened the door to the Void Realm, and it unleashed something that the gods needed to kill instantly. And maybe them opening a fissure into the Void Realm cursed them. It might be a case of, bit off a bit too more than they could chew, cursed themselves accidentally, not knowing what forces they were dealing with, and that the gods kind of had to take a moment and be like, fuck, we gotta blow this thing up and nuke it, or else everything else in the world was going to be corrupted into this void.
I feel like that's giving the gods too much positive energy for my liking.
I mean, true, but from what we know of Venti and of Zhongli and A, they're complex, but they're not evil.
Debatable. Zhongli was totally evil for at least 5 years.
Okay, okay, yeah, well...
You seen those spears he's thrown into the ocean?
I mean, he was part of the slave trade, too,
Evil, slave trade.
Evil. But that's the question of did the curse come through the people kind of, messing with forces they didn't really know about and were, for their thirst of knowledge? I mean, they were all about technology.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't they want to start to explore realms that they possibly shouldn't have any business being in? It's possible that maybe the gods use the void to curse them for I guess their sin of thinking that they are smarter and know better than the gods. But I also think there could be the possibility of the curse is a consequence of their own actions.
There's an interesting quote about Dainsleif which was on the Hoyo Lab site, and it was posted by the official Genshin account. But there's a quote about, I guess, him that starts out as the original calamity had been overturned, yet the island in the sky set the earth to burn. Chalk pursues gold, and this time inopportune, the eclipse is swallowed by the crimson moon. The future must atone for bygone mistakes as the bond familiar falters and breaks. Of the same blood, elders and the youth, such is the cycle of the world and truth. Dane, what is that strand of blonde hair to you? Someone you must kill, or the object of your penitence? By a self-proclaimed prophet. Oh, and I forgot the first line, which is the confluence between the past and the future. The first, or I guess the second line, the original calamity had been overturned, yet this island in the sky set the earth to burn. So it makes me wonder if they prevented a calamity from happening, and then Celestia undid it somehow.
May I throw out a crackpot theory that kind of ties into everything you and Al just said?
Oh, always.
Please do. We love crack.
Crack is whack, kid. So gold, as far as we know, is from Khaenri'ah. We don't 100% know if she was born there, raised there, whatever that might mean. What if gold was using her alchemy in Khaenri'ah to try to create a more powerful realm, maybe even a safe place for them? This would be a situation where gold accidentally opens the void realm. Gold opens the void realm and is mad hyped because she can go and create all these evil creatures and do whatever the hell she wants in there. That would actually lead to Durin being corrupted by the Abyss, because gold would probably be corrupted by the Abyss. And what if she opened the void realm and unleashed all sorts of monsters besides the ones she created into the world? The gods of Celestia come down, they get rid of all the abyssal monsters, but they let Gold's monsters run wild and still destroy Teyvat and destroy Khaenri'ah.
Oh, I could see that. You know what?
Yeah.
Gold is the end-all be-all villain of this game now, in my mind.
I think that could lead to Gold also being the sustainer of heavenly principles, as well as Skirk. She could be living in the Abyss now, but there's also no knowledge of where her and Albedo were living prior to her sending Albedo to Mondstadt. All we know is that one day, Gold and Albedo were out exploring, and they found in the heart of a dungeon the heart of Nabarius. Nobody knows what the heart of Nabarius is. There are some theories that the Nabarius's heart could be like some sort of creature or even an archon. And there is a demon, a Marquise of Hell, that's mentioned in Ars Goetia, which we talked about in our first episode because it relates back to Paimon as well in Ars Goetia. Nabarius takes the form of a three-headed dog or a raven. So there's this whole thing that they found this heart. We don't know, again, if it's an Archon's heart, like a dead Archon's heart, a monster or whatever. And Gold was like, all right, Albedo, I'm leaving you. Go find out what the world means and go live in Mondstadt. Like, go find my friend Alice. She's over there. She's got a cute kid. Go become a big brother. Go become the chief alchemist of Mondstadt, and peace out. I'll see you later. Like, where were they prior to that?
Well, another line from this quote about Dainsleif is, "Chalk pursues gold in this time inopportune. The eclipse is swallowed by the crimson moon." We know the eclipse is referring to the Eclipse dynasty, which was the ruling dynasty of Khaenri'ah at the time of the calamity, and swallowed by the crimson moon referring to the cataclysm. So what is this chalk pursues gold? Like maybe Albedo was going after gold and he somehow did Albedo cause the cataclysm?
Shut up. No. I still believe in my heart of hearts that Albedo is whatever age he looks like. Like, I think that she made a baby out of alchemy and that he has been growing up. Because there were other Albedos before Albedo, but they sucked and Durin ate them. So,
I mean,
not all of them.
Not all of them. Nope. No, not all. His constellation is a fetus, like a little,
exactly.
an incubated fetus.
And he loves to say moment of birth.
Moment of birth. Which, what was he a test tube baby? We're not sure. Maybe
no, he's a chalk baby.
Yeah, but how did he gestate? Like, that's the question. Did gold put him in her in
I don't like that. Stop. That made me gasp more than I expected.
Just I don't know. Look,
we've never seen pregnancy in this game, so that really threw me for a loop.
And I hope we never do.
Can you imagine?
Everything is so stagnant. And no one really dies unless they it's a dramatic thing. But there's no one being born. There's no one really aging. What's happening?
Well, they shouldn't be aging yet. The only person who ages is Tepe, R.I.P.
Oh, Tepe.
Oh no, too soon.
Now, isn't there a random quest? Maybe it's a daily, or it's just one of those random ones that pop up. I swore there was a pregnant lady in Mondstadt that she's just out in the woods, looking for something.
Oh my God. What?
Is she good?
Oh.
She only talked to me. Am I just crazy? Did I just make that up?
I mean, that's totally a possibility, but also it makes sense that they filtered out that daily because it's been 2 years now in the game. So hopefully that lady is somewhere with a baby now.
It's we just come back and she's still pregnant. It's oh, who's the person from fucking Family Guy that's pregnant for years?
Oh my God. I try to Google it and the first thing that comes up the autofill is Genshin Impact pregnant fanfiction.
No! Abort mission, close your tab.
Tiff, I think you were just reading something.
I didn't realize y'all found my fanfics. I'm sorry to say.
Stop reading it while playing.
I ain't even on AO3. This shit's going straight to Tumblr.
I will say that while the Abyss affects time in crazy ways, I do find that Hoyoverse is pretty good at showing you lapses of time in-game. And that's really shown most recently with Victor in Sumeru. How Victor, the Fatui member who sits in the Church of Favonius, or whatever it's called, the church in Mondstadt, he's now in Sumeru just enjoying his life, and he's been restationed. And in Leeway, you have the two guards of the Shiznayan Bank. They take turns. One is a night guard, one is a day guard, but they're also secretly in love, and they meet up during the Lantern Rite. But one of them is actually getting ready to go home to Shiznaya because he's uncomfortable and unhappy in Leeway. And I haven't been in Leeway since the most recent update to check on him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made him leave soon, especially with Victor being on the move. So they do typically keep up with time. There's also one time I was in the Dawn Winery and I was talking to Elzer. Is that his name? He and I were chatting, having a good old time. And he was like, oh, by the way, I don't know where Master D-Luke is. He went out on some sort of journey. And I was like, oh, that's good. He's just MIA out there. And then a few months later, Hidden Strife happened. So I was always curious if that was on purpose as well. They do a pretty good job at dealing with time. So I'm gonna hope that this lady ain't just pregnant in the woods and that either you read some fanfic too late at night or whatever.
Or just made it up.
We'll never know. We'll find a dead body with two skeletons.
Can I just bring us back to time in general?
Of course.
So we mentioned early on a few times that when Ajax child was in the abyss, there was 3 months, but in Teyvat it was 3 days. I've always had a problem with that whole timeline that we talked about, even in our first episode of, was there a time jump? When did this happen? And one of those things that I think became a little bit of a confusion point for me was back with that defiled statue. Like, how did our sibling become the leader of a whole order in that same time that we just been like hanging out Paimon? And I think that goes to the side of how everything is so much accelerated in that void land, in that void realm.
But I think that our sibling being the Abyss leader more so goes to how long they've been awake in Teyvat. Based on our newest theory, which it seems like we change theories every episode, but that's good because that means we're learning. But based on our newest theory, it would seem that we were locked up years prior to the cataclysm and that our sibling woke up right before the cataclysm and was able to go and travel the world and also make it to a beautifully well-working Khaenri'ah before it fell. So our sibling is going on a much different journey, hopefully, than we are, where Khaenri'ah falls in front of them and people they know and care about die, and they have like a villain origin story. Whereas I feel like we are getting a slight villain origin story. My Lumine is getting quite sassy with people, especially after the whole Tepe thing. She said, Tepe's dead, I'ma go kill Scaramouche. And then in Sumeru even, she goes, oh, hell no, you killed Dunsanyard? Again, sorry if that's really pronounced wrong. Fuck you guys, I'm gonna go kill these Emirates that we've been fighting every day for like the last 3 months without knowing it, and I'm gonna fuck you all over because I'm angry. We're having a turning point in the game right now.
Interesting.
I know I brought up in the first episode of the Battle Pass trailer, and there's like some idea of abyssal corruption in said thing, but it definitely feels like the idea of a chosen one, the two siblings that are basically the yin and yang. We have this moment where it feels like these two siblings, who were probably at one point angels, have fallen and are so mad. The gods are just letting shit happen to these people. Like, a lot of it is fucked up. No one's stepping into the delusion shit, and people are dying.
Can we recap the Battle Pass trailer? Because I forget the details of it.
Yeah, so it starts out with kind of like a person on a throne sending the princess, which is supposed to be Lumine, or hinted at as Lumine.
I'd like to say that I never thought that the person, the princess, was Lumine personally. It's a debate that I've had with a few of our friends about who that person could possibly be. But there's something in my heart of hearts that is like, there's no way that's Lumine, because A, it doesn't look like Lumine, and I know it's not like the most detail-oriented art, but Lumine has a very specific hairstyle that has not changed in probably 1,000 years. And while it's very clear that Hoyoverse has made Aether the canon playing twin, they have done a really good job in-game of making sure that they don't pick either or for things like that. And I think that if you had Lumine as your playable character and it was supposed to be your twin, that would be Aether, and it would be a prince instead. So I do think it's possibly a princess of Khaenri'ah or a princess of a land, and it could be from the royal court. It could be Kaya's sister or mother or someone that Dainsleif falls in love with. I'm not sure.
I don't know. So here's what the transcript is. Once there was a glorious kingdom established among the heavens. From the kingdom came a crowned heir tasked with seeking out the Genesis Pearl from the kingdom of darkness. So obviously the kingdom of darkness has to be the Abyss.
The Abyss, or just the Void.
Well, that is the Abyss, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So the first crowned heir began her journey of seeking the pearl, but she was deceived and the memory of her noble origins faded. She now believed that she was the queen of the kingdom of darkness. But take heart, a second crowned heir had already taken up the path where the first had stumbled. This is a story of your journey or your tale to be told. So that's really the thing that jumps out at me the most, is the Genesis Pearl that exists within the Abyss. And that makes me wonder if that's what Gold was using to create all of these creatures using abyssal power.
Unless the Genesis Pearl, you know how all the Archons have gnosises? What if the Genesis Pearl is kind of like the gnosis of the old time god, because the time god is dead.
But why would it be in the...
And also, only the 7 Archons that survived after the Archon War have gnosises.
Right.
That was kind of what the Archon War did for them.
And that's what connects them to Celestia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if this is about the twins, the first twin goes down first of all, they have a crown. So the kingdom came a crowned heir. So I guess it doesn't say that there's like a parent necessarily.
But they do talk about how, like, I can't remember where it was, but they said like there's like a throne of Celestia, and the throne is technically not like a code name, but kind of for the sustainer of heavenly principles.
Right.
So it could have been like, I'm sending you on this quest, and then they send next one. It's got to be the twins, right?
I think it's gold.
It could be gold.
The only reason I think that, and I know that I'm definitely going to be least popular opinion in the like overarching Genshin community about this, and that's fine. But, typically when the word Genesis is like, the origin or where things begin, the start of something new, and a pearl typically symbolizes like perfection and could also symbolize at times like having a long life, being fertile, being like really wise, spiritually aware. So then if we kind of put 2 and 2 together, is the Genesis pearl the truth of this world that Gold has Albedo searching for?
Ooh,
I mean,
maybe.
it's possible.
But who's the second crowned heir that has taken up the path where the first had stumbled?
That's totally where my shit ends. I don't know.
I mean, the only other person we know that is quote unquote crowned is Khaenri'ah.
True. Or it could be Gold and Albedo.
Or could it be Master Varka and Jean?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is very Mondstadtian, that those graphics too. Of course, I think you guys are also right. I think it could 100% just be the twins. And
yeah, I think it's the siblings. I really do. I think especially because Venti's line is, he's saying this is where our journey is. And I think he's always talking to us as the traveler.
That's true. That's a very good point. So, okay, we've covered a little bit about Skirk and where we think the Abyss's origins are, how it relates back to Khaenri'ah. I did want to take a second to talk a little bit about portals and possible entrances into the Abyss. Right now, we know we have the Spiral Abyss, and we're not 100% sure what that is. Is it a part of the Void Realm? Is that just a coincidental nickname for it? I think not, but who knows? But also, we know there's multiple Abyss entrances based on Childe's storyline and how he fell into the Abyss in Snezhnaya. He lived in a very small waterside town or city. He loves ice fishing and stuff like that. So it's not even like he lives in like a major city in Snezhnaya where maybe they've figured out how to get into the Abyss. He lives in a small town. He's just a small town girl.
In a small town world.
In a small town world. Took the midnight train trying to get out of Snezhnaya and fell into
Oh
the
my
Abyss.
God.
Anyway.
Keep going.
Keep going. Oh no, I'm on the spider. Streetlights, people, man. Now he's in love with Lumine. Or John Lee, whatever you prefer. I personally think that the Abyss must have multiple rips in the system, right? It almost makes me think of Stranger Things. Yes, exactly. Like how the Upside Down rips new portals depending on things going on. I feel like that's similar to the Abyss. And it would almost make sense that there are more rips in Snezhnaya and Mondstadt than anywhere else. That's my personal opinion. Because I think everything's going to end up in Mondstadt. I think everything is going to end there. I also think the Spiral Abyss being so close to Mondstadt, I think that the extension site of the Thousand Winds that's a little to the left of Spiral Abyss looks like it has stairs going down into the ocean, which could also be an old entrance to the Abyss or even an entrance to Khaenri'ah, which could then be having entryway into the Abyss from there. And I also think in Snezhnaya, there's a lot of theories floating around, right, that Piero might be Kaya's dad, but also we know Piero and Dodore and La Signora all come from Khaenri'ah origins. Not that they're all from Khaenri'ah necessarily, but they all have relations back to the cataclysm, and they've been around for that many years. If the Abyss Order is the people of Khaenri'ah, then some of the people of Khaenri'ah, aka Piero, are now in Snezhnaya, working with the Tsaritsa. And at one point, Childe even has a line about how the Abyss is also his enemy, he says. But he does not say that it's the enemy of the Fatui. So I wouldn't be surprised if there are more portals in Snezhnaya because the Fatui is possibly working with the Abyss.
Yeah, I've always wondered why the Fatui and the Abyss aren't teamed up together, because they have the same goal, right?
I don't know. Childe says that they have the same goal, but of course, Childe is a little PTSD scarred. He just wants to kick Skirk's ass. He says that, I think, in one of his voice lines or storylines. So he openly says in Leeway during one of the stories with him that he does not share the same goals as the Abyss, but he doesn't say directly, but he suggests that the Fatui might. But it is weird. Why aren't they working together? Especially if Piero could possibly be Khaenri'ah. It doesn't make too much sense.
It'd be interesting to see if at some point there's a merge between these two sides, maybe even some of the sneak peeks that we saw into the next part of Sumeru and some of the people that are involved there. But maybe that'll even start to kind of clear that up a little bit.
I mean, maybe they're afraid if they team up with them, they'll turn into abyss monsters.
True.
They just don't want to. I don't want to talk like this. Who would want that? I mean, that's a curse in of itself. Like, no one wants that.
Also, I think it's interesting how Lumine is carried by a ruin guard, and the Fatui Harbinger funeral video we got from Hoyoverse out of nowhere one evening this summer, which was beautiful and glorious. We have that one Harbinger that looks like she controls a monster or a creature or a robot of sorts that also carries her around. So it kind of feels like she's being linked back to the Abyss as well. And it's weird. So there's a lot of connections between the Fatui and the Abyss, but nothing solid yet.
Right.
We can't hold on to that string tight yet. But it's kind of there. We could see a line of fate somehow.
I could definitely see, for example, maybe one of the Harbingers being involved with the Abyss for their own personal gain. I think
Dottore,
literally.
Yeah, basically.
What is 7,000 clones?
But it's possible that the Tsaritsa and the Fatui in general don't want to be dealing with the Abyss. Maybe because that's not their main goal. They maybe not want to be using that type of power.
She's also a god.
Yeah. She's a god. Why the fuck would she need abyssal power?
Right. She probably wants to prove that they don't need the Abyss.
Ooh.
Just to go back to the portals and how the weird little entrances and exits into the Abyss. When Dainsleif appears in the Chasm, doesn't he say something like, I didn't mean to come here? Almost like my portal went wacky and I ended up in the wrong place.
Yes, he does. Oh my god, I forgot about that. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, where was he going and why is this system so janked up?
The Abyss Order can control where the portals go, but it seems that if you're not in the Abyss Order, you cannot, because when Dainsleif goes through that portal and ends up in the Chasm, later on, an Abyss Lector is saying, I didn't switch where the portal exited in time, so you being here is catastrophic because you're not supposed to have been able to get here. So who he was following was supposed to actually change the exit, and they forgot to, or they didn't do it in time. So that's why Dainsleif ended up there.
And that's when Dainsleif explains to us, too, that the abyssal portals that we've seen him use and our sibling use work in a very similar fashion to the waypoints we use, and that they're a network and they're not directly A to B, and that you can really start at A and go to the rest of the alphabet if needed.
Oh, very interesting. Can we get that in real life? It'd be nice.
Well, Paimon makes a really interesting point that's very similar to the way that the waypoints work in Teyvat. So it makes me wonder what network they're using.
It also makes me wonder why Paimon got that right away.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if there's a corresponding network in the Light Realm, and that's what the portal system in Teyvat uses.
I wouldn't be surprised, because if anything, you could think of it like teleporting through wind, like you're riding a wind current, but you're instantly there. I don't know. It could be multiple. Oh man, this is just a rabbit hole on a rabbit hole.
It is. I also always thought that it could also be related to the ley lines somehow, because it feels like anything magical happening in Teyvat typically is related back to the ley lines.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I really have no proof of that. I don't know. Apparently, Albedo is doing a lot of ley line research right now, guys. He's getting back to D-Luke about it soon. So hopefully we'll have some information about that.
Yeah, I hope so. I want to know more about them.
But I do think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you all for joining us today to talk about the Abyss. We hope we haven't confused you even more. Please join us next week when we're going to be talking about Vanessa, the possible Pyro Archon / Venti's ex-bestie / the first Knights of Favonius member. And please remember that you can keep up to date on all of our new episodes and things coming out by following us online on Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, or Twitter, Tales of Teyvat. Otherwise, safe journeys, travelers. We'll see you next week.
Bye, nerds.